All right, I think we're good to go. Let me just share my pleasure of having Dr. Abdul Rahman talk to us about CCI AI Testbed. CCI is featuring over $20 million annual investment in research, and the two testbeds that are being developed and already in use by CCI and all Virginia universities are wireless and 5G, and the one very dear to our heart, which is AI Assurance Testbed. We all have high hopes about AI Testbed, and with this presentation, we'd like Abdul to bring the testbed closer to us, and hopefully many more people from VCU will start using AI Testbed. This AI Testbed started as AI Assurance, but I assume that there's no reason why any different problem in AI cannot be ran on this testbed and used for. So I'm a fellow at CCI and very interested in seeing this testbed grow, and also director of VCU Cybersecurity Center, and very interested in our faculties using this testbed more. So Abdul, thank you very much for coming, and the floor is yours.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I am a member of HUME. I'm a research professor there, and I'm also the CCI AI Testbed Director. And I'd like to talk a little bit today about the testbed in hopes of soliciting more interest and participation in using it. It's been funded by the state of Virginia to support analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning development, prioritized in the area of cybersecurity, but is not just limited to that, but is really made accessible as a resource to all of CCI. Let's see. So I want to talk a little bit about the roadmap and where we're going. I have some slides here. I have a full hour allocated. I don't know if I'm going to use a full hour. I may go under, I may go over, depending upon where the conversation goes. So some high-level observations, things that you know already. Virginia Tech is the node, and other institutions are considered, it's the hub, and other institutions are considered nodes, or what are called spokes. And the way that we are architecting and designing the CCI AI testbed is to support this hub and spoke design, and we're leveraging technology that will enable a logical cloud, really authentication and authorization of users using standard IDAM controls that allow for federated access, along with being able to support a progressive and increased user population for both total number of users and concurrent users. We're also looking to extend our capabilities to support some of the public commercial clouds, Azure, GCP, or AWS. But that is, on our roadmap and currently backlogged. Right now, we have an on-premises infrastructure at the Northern Virginia facility within Virginia Tech, with support that's run by the Blacksburg campus. Our approach today toward the AI testbed is what's called infrastructure as a service. We're going to provide platform and capabilities for users to log in through making available high-level user interfaces, which is web interfaces and APIs. We will support overarching or generalized DevOps pipelines to support machine learning and AI. And right now we have on-prem state-of-the-art hardware, DGX2 by NVIDIA, and we've rack mounted and installed 2 A100s that give us an additional GPU footprint. On the far right, our target toward the end of this year is tracking toward building a broader community to support collaboration of not just code, not just analytics, and not just data, but on components and elements that can be shared across different problem and research areas. And so part of this is to standardize on Red Hat OpenShift, which gives us the ability to leverage Kubernetes for orchestration and management of clouds, which gives us resource control for an expanding or contracting user base. And as you can see, some of the other features here that we're going to try to target is to establish a hub or a collaboration space where different users from different institutions within CCI can share data and code and capabilities in a manner across this node hub spoke architecture. Some of the elements that we're looking to build, test, and deploy are related to self-service provisioning. Because this infrastructure is a service, we're not really looking to hold everyone's hand, but we are prepared to provide documentation and support, as well as a Teams channel for members to ask questions. We want environments to be consistent in terms of the builds and the versions, along with the amount of hardware that they need, along with allocations of GPUs and CPUs. We're looking to deploy capabilities in an automated way, leveraging CI/CD pipelines and best practices from DevSecOps, utilizing configuration management, and finally, we're going to continue to improve things through gathering logs and metrics and understanding where we can obtain efficiencies. Our high-level roadmap all the way on the left consists of 4 key dimensions, and they're written sort of vertically or horizontally pivoted. The bottom row is memory. The next above that is compute. Next above that is users, and the next above that is hardware. And as you can see in sort of the chevrons moving from left to right, from blue all the way to green, what we're tracking for in terms of timeline broken down by quarters. Right now, we're at the second quarter starting of 2021 calendar year, and we're on target in terms of timing. We have rack mounted our A100s. We do have DGX2 in place. We can support 100 users with a 20% concurrency of about 20 concurrent users. We have compute cores described here, along with total amount of RAM of about 1.5 terabytes with 30 GPUs that we can systematically distribute for whatever load is there. And we're tracking in this way without having additional memory compute up to 200 users, ideally by the September-October timeframe. So at this point, we can take questions as we go, which probably would be good, or we can hold all the questions to the end. What do you think is the best way? Are there any questions on this slide or any of the previous ones? I'll keep going. If there's a question, please interrupt. CCI node participation, which consists of members of this call, will authenticate through single sign-on known as DEX, which is an identity and access management fronting or veneer for CI logon, which is a university-specific IDAM. And so once that happens, you have two-factor authentication in place, and you get dropped into the advanced cluster management for Kubernetes portal application, which will allow you to provision your environment based upon your user requirements upon setting up your initial account. If you're from a specific university, once you drop into your Jupyter Hub or your resources, they'll be allocated user, project, cluster, and university-wide. And depending upon what other university you may be collaborating with, you may have the ability to share user processes or, in particular, notebooks or other things. Specifically, there are, by default, set up some hard boundaries because we're dealing with a multi-tenant scenario. So if you do log in, you will have virtual machine storage and compute allocated to you that will be different potentially from somebody else logging in, and you will be securely firewalled off from other people so that if you're running on a building a project that's sensitive or you have very specific research requirements, no one else will be able to see that but you, just through your user ID and logon ID. Another example of this, and to the far right, you'll see the rack that was, in early March, but now as of a week ago, it's filled with 2 A100s, so we'll update this. Starting from the left, you have the DGX2, and then to the right, you have the 2 A100s, which give more GPUs. A particular job in a container will, run potentially on the DGX2, but you may have OCS, which is OpenShift Container Storage, managing the hardware for storage, where different resources are controlled in unique ways. We have a 200 terabyte external array that's connected with mount points to whatever VM may show up for users that log in, and we have about 30 terabytes of internal storage for storing data or bringing data in or mounting or staging any particular jobs or data that you need. The test bed supports different analytic processes, and since initially in this phase we're supporting infrastructure as a service, I just wanted to put together an exemplar data analytics process that you could run on the test bed to support your particular machine learning pipelines. So starting from the left in green, you initially get your data through code.vt.edu. There is a data repository there. It is cataloged, and there's automated processes to download that. So say you wanted to get additional data, you would basically send an email to our email distro. We would then bring it into the code.vt.edu repository. And then now that it's there in its catalog, it would be made available to you to bring on to the testbed. The reason why that we want to go through this additional step is one of the values of the testbed is to be able to provide access to different data sets that the community can use and touch and see. So while you're coming in, say a new user, and you're running maybe some Bayesian, you want to build some kind of Bayesian model, or you want to build some other kind of model, some regression model, and you've seen some sample sets that are out there that run, and maybe a previous researcher has downloaded them. You could also check out their code and check out the data and get up and running pretty fast utilizing the testbed. And that's really the whole purpose of having a lot of these collaboration tools and repositories in place. Once you had data, part of what we're trying to do is democratize exploratory data analysis. And this gets to a term used in data science of inverting the data analytics bathtub, whereby the EDA process becomes automated, which gives you more time to build artificial intelligence, machine learning, and models. Part of EDA does consist of doing data visualization and data profiling so you can know what's in the data and then lead to actually your algorithm and code development. We encourage everyone within the testbed to commit their code to code.vt.edu and basically tie that to the data set that they're using if possible, so that other members that come in that want to participate in similar research studies can do that, but it's not a requirement. Finally, for this particular slide, we were collaborating with members of CCI that were interested in building a data catalog for certain biological chemicals and molecules in order for an NSF program. And so they wanted to build out a data model that supported using AI that could populate a data model of certain behaviors that they observe within certain molecules. And so I presented this to them as something that could be supported on the AI testbed, but this by no means is limiting. This is just an exemplar. Any questions at this point? Okay, well, I always say if I can make it past the first few slides, it's downhill from there. So this is a good sign, hopefully. This is our operational vision of where we're trying to get to with the testbed. And while the testbed does support AI and ML, there are some current industry standards and trends that are best practices that we are working to implement as part of the processes for utilizing the AI testbed. And we call this really the data science lifecycle. So starting from the left, right, really in input and ideation, it's really the idea of building a model. What do you want to build? What do you want to do? What do you want to look for? What kind of features, what kind of phenomena do you want to model? And part of what is good about the test bed and the direction that we're headed is if someone has already done that or looked at that or looked at something similar and used a similar data set, you can simply pull their data set and their code and get running in a Jupyter notebook in a particular VM. And so part of what we think is valuable here is that in the research and development workflow, where you do have to run cross-validation and testing, part of your barrier to entry is just getting started. So some of the candidate models that are here on some data sets that might be related to what you're doing may populate a data store or may populate a user interface, but essentially you can gain efficiencies through this dev QA and UAT to production model utilizing the test bed. So the test bed could be used just as an extension of your existing research teams to model dev and QA things, to maybe train and test things, or to just test things. And you want to utilize the GPUs on the AI test bed to perform cross-validation or testing of your model, where you actually train your model on your own on-prem environment. You may push up to the test bed in some unique way, in an automated way, to basically validate things and or test things. This is a perfectly accepted model, and it's something that is encouraged as well in some of the workflows. Either way, training, testing, or validation, deployment, all of these different phases can be supported today. So some of what we've talked a little bit about the test bed, not everybody knows what is the advantage or pros and cons of the test bed and what value it brings, right? Well, the test bed is built on industry best hardware, NVIDIA DGX2 and A100s. We've upgraded the backplane to 100 gigs so that the network, once the data is on the test bed, won't experience lag and delays. So poor performance due to network backplane and infrastructure we've ruled out due to the expenditure of the recent budget to do a hardware refresh and infrastructure refresh on this. In some of the ways we're unique, we're building a collaboration zone tracking toward an open data hub, and we are really working to catalog data sets that we want to use to support collaboration. And for potential industry partner, it's the ability to have such a broad and expansive data catalog, along with a huge myriad of cybersecurity researchers that give the test bed its sort of its chops and quals. Some of the tenets that we have within the test bed, really there's 5 of them. And this may be additional information, but this is part of what we've gone through in thinking about the design of the test bed. We want to be able to support multi-tenancy in a secure way with huge amounts of volume, variety, and velocity of data of different types. We want to be able to support inter and intra-university collaboration between the spokes, the hubs, the nodes, everybody. And we want to be able to leverage DevSecOps best practices for automation, scalability, and integration, why we've standardized on OpenShift and Kubernetes. And our collaboration zone through our Teams channel really drives this collaborative desire to help everybody learn how to use the test bed as a tool to get your research underway very, very fast. And so I'm very passionate about that. I am a user of the test bed as well. I am conducting cybersecurity research. And so part of the acid test is that it has to work for me and my colleagues that are working on it. And I'd definitely be interested in talking about research projects and things of interest to you all, as I have potentially some collaborations with members of different, I guess, directorships and nodes within CCI. Any questions at this point? Okay, great. This is a little bit of a summary of the infrastructure overview just on the DGX2. This is just a little bit old, but I think I touched on this. Really, you have 24 cores in the DGX2. We've upped it some with the A100s. We have 1.5 terabytes of RAM. Presently on the DGX2, we have 16 GPUs of 32 gigs total. And external storage, we have 200 terabytes. Internal storage, we have 30 terabytes. When a new user is created, they're allocated 1 terabyte of storage unless they come forward and say, hey, I need more storage. That's the standard. And it's fine. In your request, we can allocate that. Only thing is that we're sharing this as across the community. So it may have to be time boxed. We can't give it to you for 6 months if you're asking for, say, 50 terabytes of storage or something along those lines. So we're going to have to come up with an arrangement that can accommodate everyone. Our goal, September, October, is to support 200 total users with a 20% concurrency rate, which is maxed out between 40 and 50 concurrent users. So we want to have a hardware and backplane and infrastructure to support 40 to 50 concurrent users with 200 total user accounts created by October 2021. So today we're at about, I think, 90 users total. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. My name is Richard Severiniak. The
Hi.
question I have is, how are you using time boxing, and what application or what type of structure do you use for current time boxing?
Yeah, so right, that's a great question, and you know, I love that you asked that. Today we are looking at our list of users and what they're allocated. So if you're a standard user that gets allocated CPUs with 1 terabyte of storage, you can keep that forever, as long as you're a user there. So that's just your default. If you would like more, then we take that under consideration. So we only have 230 terabytes of total storage. So if you come in and say, hey, I need 25 terabytes, that's more than 10% of the total storage. So we get into this sort of heuristic discussion, which varies sort of week to week and month to month. How much total storage is allocated? How much can we share, and for how long? And it becomes really a negotiation where we come back to you and you say, okay, for my research project, I need 180 days of 25 terabytes. And we go back and look at the calculus. We look at how much storage has been used over the previous weeks. And we basically come to you and say, okay, will you be using 25 terabytes total right from day one? Or can we start you potentially at 15 terabytes and scale up to 25? Or what is your hardware profile? Now, part of this is to really do two things. Number one, to accommodate your request. But then the other part is to create a demand signal so that Milos and others in the node directorship can come back and say, yay, verily, we need to double the total amount of storage allocated because our users have more jobs that they need to run. Does that make sense?
Yes, I was also thinking about, a classroom type of model where, colleges, universities would use some sort of time sharing to be able to use those type of resources to demonstrate in a classroom time period, but possibly use off hours type of processing and running the AI.
I fully support that. And if you want, I can share my email address and maybe we could have a discussion about that, and I can bring a couple people in. That mode of operation sounds very attractive. And if that's what can help get the test bed used more and adopted more, then I think that's a great idea. I fully support that. The reason why I'm saying those things is that there's not that many people have come to us with this particular use case. But I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think it's a great idea. So maybe we could talk offline about it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, because I think it's an excellent opportunity for students to actually use artificial intelligence processing in a controlled environment where they could get some hands-on experience.
That's great. And for students, they can get an account. Faculty, they can get an account. So by all means, if they want an account and they're working with you and it's for a class, when we set up their account, that would just be part of the description of what they're doing. Hey, I'm registered for electrical engineering 107. You are my professor, and my professor has suggested that I get an account so that we can explore XYZ. And so they can get an account, or we can discuss, using a shared class account, and we can just figure out what the storage arrangement is there. But I think that's a great idea. That sounds really attractive. Any other questions? Great stuff. Awesome. Okay, so let's keep going here. Some of the objectives by phase. I think you kind of get the picture. I've been planting seeds for the past 25 minutes or so on we're in our year one, right? So year one ends at the end of this fiscal year, which is the end of June 2021. And we've gotten our minimal viable product stood up. We have several pilot projects. We have some students and faculty involved. And we're working to get industry partnerships. There are several FFRDCs, federally funded research development centers, MITRE and MIT Lincoln Labs that are working with us. But by all means, these are some of our goals. So alignment to our goals really is more of sort of the collective CCI community. And like I said, the goal that I'm trying to align with Luis, who is the CCI director, is to really cultivate an academic setting where the testbed can be used to support a myriad of use cases. And as we move into year 2, we really want to support more of CCI schools. So accredited hybrid infrastructure, about 20 CCI schools, data and model management protocols, potentially pilot a few sensitive projects. And our goal overall is to really drive toward peer review publications and publishable research. And we're looking to continue to utilize the testbed as part of proposal win themes to support your research. So say, for example, you find a proposal and you want to put in something useful. There is standard blurb wording that I have written up for CCI that you can include if you want to add the testbed to part of your proposal. And so I would encourage everybody to do that, to see if we can continue to leverage the testbed to support winning more funding for cyber-related research. And as you can see, we're trying to scale, toward impact years 3 to 5. And it's straightforward, and I think we can get there, right? So part of what I want to do is to continue to socialize the value of the testbed and make it reachable and usable by everyone here. Anticipated usage here, these numbers may change, right? So at the end of year 1, we're trying to push with the goal of getting to 200 users with a 20% concurrency. That's a swag. Right now we're at about 100. Will more users come on board? They could, but right now that's our goal and objective. So we're tracking toward a capacity plan of 200 total users with 20% concurrency by September, October timeframe, and all of our processes and our infrastructure are tracking to that. Year 2, year 3, year 4, and beyond, there's a swag at that, but depending, post-COVID and how, there's more usage, we'll have to revise this. So this is one, I guess this is one aspect of, I'm going to stop sharing and then I'm going to reshare my screen. What I want to do is bring up, I think, another set of slides for you all. And then I also want to show you the repository that we utilize for our data. So give me 1 second to pull this up. So this is a real live demo here. Give me a sec here. Okay, so let me share my screen again. Okay, so I've shared my screen here and I've logged into code.vt.edu. And as you can see here, this is CCI AI Testbed. There are 3 components to the testbed that are given out by default. One of them is access to code.vt.edu, which is the data catalog. So within our data catalog, we have essentially ingested a bunch of data, and within our README, we've cataloged all of the data that we have here. And as you can see, we've articulated the data set name. We've determined a yes or no whether it's been loaded. We may have the file path updated soon, public or private data set, whether someone has just put that in there, and the data set description, and then who's requested it. And so we have data sets for geography, for healthcare. We have some malware data sets here, and this is what I was speaking about. Hey, I'm interested in looking at defanged malware to be able to run some interesting, use cases or research on. We've ingested some network traffic data here that supports different use cases as well. We have some social science data that people have ingested here for a variety of different reasons. Obviously, you can do things like social networks using the Enron email data set and the Higgs Twitter data set as well here. So different researchers are looking at that. We have some transportation data sets here. And so this tells you the mount point of where it's located in order for you to get access to it. So the interesting thing is, even though this is stored here on the test bed, this gives you the mount point, this is stored here on the repository. This gives you the mount point on the test bed if you want to pull this data set down. So you don't need to pull it down from here, it's already preloaded. So a lot of these are already loaded up. That's where this file path would be. So you could just take a look at the data catalog to see what's already loaded. So hey, I wanted to run some, I have a study where I want to build some regression analysis or maybe natural language processing against certain malware. Well, what data sets exist? Well, hey, this Sorrel data set exists. This is 20 million samples here, and Sachin Shetty loaded it up already. That's great. He's using it for his research. This is something that's of interest to me too. Well, boom. I'm just going to go to this mount point and I'm going to copy it over to where I am, or I'm going to build my capabilities against this one from a standpoint of my Jupyter notebook and be able to reference it in that way. So this is something that's very useful and easy. And I've seen this work before in the past. Again, we have ASIN-SAR wake detector for ship wake detection in images. We have some Stanford drone data, large-scale data collects images of video. So there's some satellite and video. There's wireless communication traffic here. There's 5G. We're doing some 5G collaborations with the 5G testbed as well as part of some funded research. And we have some other data sets here. So we've added a lot recently, and we are actually getting some of these others staged. So just because they say no, we're just working to actually load them up. Right now, it's a semi-automatic process, and part of our team does that. Part of what I think is important to see here is that within the data catalog, if you were to look at it, for example, you'll see things like malware, for example. And what we do is we store things in a YAML file. And what YAML basically gives you is a very fixed schema for how we're going to store data and determine where it is, who owns it, and various provenance metadata about it or lineage. So what we require is that if you want to load a data set, work with us so that we can maintain this catalog. That way this can have overall benefit for the entire CCI community. And I think this is something that can definitely benefit everyone. So we basically build out a YAML file for every data set. And as you can see, for the different data sources that are here that are within our purview within the catalog, we basically divided these up into different locations. So things like the transportation data set, the SAR wakes, we basically created this, and we basically have the access URL and the download URL, and we basically have an automated process that parses this particular field, pulls it down, and stores it in the location that we need to. Any questions on the repository or data catalog for the AI testbed? Okay, great. I have just a little bit more info that I want to share with you all. Let's see. Yes, so I want to share out a couple pieces, and I thought this might be better served to just answer a couple questions here. So first thing is that we have a roadmap, and this is our 2021 roadmap, and it's being updated pretty much every month. The yellow boxes consist of the milestones. And the different color codes present the work streams that we're engaged in. Where all of the nodes and CCI users default naturally is in the orange. So you can come in and run your pilot projects. You can participate in all the efforts, AI assurance, validation, verification, moving target defense, And what we'd like to do is to populate more milestones here. So we'd like to get more yellow boxes here to really track what people are working on. In addition, we're working internally to stand up an AI marketplace where we're going to look to have sort of a private preview available at the end of May through the middle of June. Hard to nail that down. And the goal is to really provide a researcher social network, community forums, and really get this marketplace stood up that resembles something like an open data hub. I believe Richard asked a question earlier around education, and we're looking to stand up an education portal, but I think some of the ideas and suggestions you had were just fantastic. And we're looking to work with different teams on, building learning modules. Speaking of which, if there are funding opportunities that leverage the testbed to develop some of these out, then I think it'd be fantastic to talk more about them. And then finally, being able to train the workforce to use the AI testbed for various task activities so that they can embed AI ML into their coursework or other things is definitely a goal that we want to get to. Finally, proposals and sponsorship and partnership is really going to be enabled through building out and leveraging an API suite, and then really trying to make it production grade toward the end of the year. I spend a majority of my time in the green, which is the infrastructure area, which is standing up the testbed, the processes, and the capabilities, along with the support and SLAs, along with being able to have a CCI fully integrated testbed across all of the CCI institutions that's secure and supports multi-tenancy and some of the other elements that we talked about. So this is our roadmap. Are there any questions on this? Okay, I'd like to share potentially another slide here on process for onboarding that I think is important. And so the process for onboarding today involves sending an email to the distro requesting access. And what we do is validate the individual is actually a member of CCI, a student or faculty, and we request some info from them. We are going to be CCing the node directors so they can know who is actually using the testbed. And essentially, the node directors have the responsibility of reporting out from a node perspective how many of the members within that particular node are utilizing the testbed for cyber-related research from a funding perspective. So if you're running a funded project, the node director would like to know, and they'd also like to know if you have been allocated resources and if you're using the resources that you need to support your research. Testbed requirement validation, and then finally we'll send the credentials. So this is part of the process. There are 3 elements, as I mentioned, that every user gets. One, they get access to the Teams collaboration site. The next, they get access to the code repositories. And finally, testbed access as of March of this year, you would get if you log in, which is done in a federated way. And this is an example of some of the projects that are going on today. This is just a cross-section. These are not all of them, but this is just some representative from different locations. And with that, I have come to the end of my presentation, and I just want to leave a little bit of time for questions. So I'll pass the moderation function back to Milos to moderate any questions.
Abdul, thank you very much. And I really appreciate the last slide on onboarding, because I believe the interest is growing at VCU tremendously, and you'll be getting a lot of requests. Can you tell us one more time, should we direct these emails to you, or?
That's a great question. Let me see if I can share my screen one more time. I want to walk everybody through. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
So I have teams up here. And you see the teams that I have here. If you're a part of the testbed and you get an approved account, you're going to get defaulted into the testbed Teams channel. And we have a wiki. And on the wiki, it will tell you exactly what you need to do. And within the wiki here, I'll just make it a little bit bigger. There's this email address here, CCI AI Testbed Support-G at vt.edu. And I think what I'd be able to do is when I get out of this channel, I'll be able to put this in the chat, and for whoever doesn't have an account, they can send an email there requesting information. So the first thing is like, hey, how do I get an account? What do I do? Well, we have a frequently asked question part, but generally in the overview, it's very straightforward. Say, hey, I want an account, and we'll try to get one for you. On the getting started part, this is the metadata that you need for getting an account. So I'll post this in here. University affiliation, supervisor name, project PI, project name, project description, data requirements, and CPU, GPU requirements. And this will be CC'd to the node director so they'll know about it. This will tell you how to access the test bed, how to SSH to the nodes, accessing the code repository, using Docker. This will tell you a little bit about the projects that we have going here. And this has been updated. We update this, pretty regularly. And as you can see, people are doing different things here, which is great. We have a description of the storage here on the wiki. This is all within the Teams channel. We also try to record whenever we've had downtime, just so that people can know. And then this will tell you how to make use of the data catalog, on code.vt.edu. We have a channel here for general notices, or if you have a problem with anything. Different people have different questions they pose, or people have trouble, but this is part of the collaboration environment. We also have created this peer support. So part of the challenge, is how do I get started? We have some files up here, surveys, working group notes, presentations. And for peer support, you can just post something right here. And we're watching this channel throughout the day. So let me stop sharing and let me see if I can post this last message into the chat channel. And there you go. So that's the email address, and that's the metadata that you need in order to request an account. And I hope that is the information that you were looking for.
Excellent.
Any other questions? I'm really excited to be sharing this information with you. I'm very passionate about this area. I've spent a lot of time in, computing and doing this for, cybersecurity research. So if any of you want to talk about collaborating or working on a particular problem, or, have interest in discussing things more, how to use a test bed, I'm available. I'm very energized and excited about talk about this particular area.
And we are really happy to have you give this seminar and get this opportunity closer to VCU. I'm sure we will be pinging you very soon with more specific questions. In the meantime, I have one. If a researcher is doing a expert-controlled work, for example, with some of the FFRDCs like you were mentioning, and this data is not, well, it's tied to everything that it gets tied to when you work with FFRDC. How comfortable should we be using this test bed? So everybody wants to use somebody else's data, but at the same time, needs to be careful about their own data.
Right.
Can you reflect a little bit on that?
Yeah, so I'm facing this current problem today. So with one FFRDC, they are going through the change management process to ensure that the data that they share at, for example, the unclassified public level is something that we can store within our test bed. And so I encourage everyone to put it back on the organization from which you share data to validate and get the sign off for export control. But all the data up on the testbed today is all open source, downloaded from the internet, or it's open source where different researchers want to state that it's private. So we've done one or the other. we don't have processes today that validate export controls of data. That is something that we should do. And ideally, there may be another test bed mimicking this that supports CUI data, but that is a work in progress, and that's really something that I encourage you, Milos, to communicate to Luis that there's a need here, and this is something that we should look at. Luis is very receptive, and we've talked about it. We've defined that. We've defined a roadmap there, and I'd love to put it on the roadmap. And so we would have to work with Luis to determine when we build that feature out.
I'm afraid this will be a key aspect for many of us. I was going to mention QE, and now you mentioned QE. We just, at least for the durational project, we can get away from that. After that, things may get published, and it's different once it's approved and went through LRS, how they call LAS, and export control process. But during the project, when we really need it, it's considered QE, if not more than that. So thank you for addressing that. Do we have questions from students? As Dr. Rahman was talking, this is open to all Virginia CCI researchers and students. Any questions from students interested in using this? Is a top of the line equipment and resource.
I do have a question. So you mentioned earlier about like with the storage, time boxing the storage sort of systems, but what sort of things are there to prevent someone from using the resources for extended periods of time? So I think you said that right now you're up to 100 users, 20 concurrent users. But if we have somebody running a process, if people are running processes for weeks or months long, let's say, using these nodes, is there anything to prevent someone from just continuous usage?
Yeah, we have logging and monitoring in place, and we monitor jobs that run past 24 hours, and we notify users about that. We're not going to interrupt people's jobs, but we would like people to be courteous in sort of the community spirit of not injuring, their fellow researcher. We've had situations where people have run jobs for long periods of time, and we have put some quotas in place so that individual users that are allocated CPUs and their 1 terabyte of storage will not step on other people. The way that we are, so that's not automated today to give you, an increase of storage of 25%. If you went to Azure or AWS, you would have to request an increase in your quota for your subscription, which would cost you more money. So this process is not foreign to current commercial cloud processes. I think part of what we are interested in learning from you all is what kind of processes should be automated, what's the kind of governance process that's enough, not too much, not too little, what's too draconian, what's not, and then what would really kind of annoy the users, right? So we want to walk in the middle of the road, and I'm very receptive, and I empathize deeply with people's work and job, I guess, allocation. So the answer to that question is we're doing some monitoring. We monitor jobs longer than 24 hours. We have some high watermark quotas in place. They don't kick people off. But Luis is put together a terms of use that everyone will have to agree to, that are really friendly rules of the road, so that, if needed, we could potentially stop people's jobs and it won't be outside the scope of what we're capable of doing to preserve everybody else's experience. I'm not a lawyer. And I hate being a police person to do that, but I think that's part of the job, I think. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
And I'm sorry about my answer taking that tone intact, but I want you to be successful. I want you to get a lot of publications. I want you to use the tools, but I also don't want your experience to hinder others from doing the same.
It's in everybody's interest that this process is well regulated. So you're doing the right thing.
Thanks. And the feedback is imperative. So if something's not working, just get in the Teams channel and say, hey, this is broken. And we'll try to fix it. And I'm on that channel Monday through Friday, most of the day. I get text messages, we talk about things. This is something that's consuming, a lot of effort. And so we're passionate about trying to make this work for everybody. Any other questions? If you'd like, I can come back in maybe a month, or whatever period, and give everybody an update on our progress for the roadmap. We brief out the node directorship every month, and we are tracking toward a roadmap. I'd love to see everyone from VCU internalize the notion of an AI testbed that's available for their use, internalize the use of it, from a supportive team that wants them to use it as a tool, and then feel comfortable about putting their projects to work on the testbed and translating that to yellow milestones that we can reflect on the roadmap.
I believe this is just the beginning. Perhaps so this is our Friday computer science seminar series, and I see Dr. Fang. We thank Dr. Fang for organizing this series and every talk every Friday. Perhaps Abdul will organize a more targeted session with professors, specifically on some questions and topics, and go a little bit deeper on maybe some topics of interest. So we would really love to continue talking to you and learning more, and contributing to CCI and making CCI go forward and helping CCI go forward.
That's great. And like I said, I'm extending an invitation to anyone, formally or informally, if they want to talk about research in cybersecurity. I'm working on several projects and papers and leveraging the testbed myself. So I'm a consumer just like everybody else is here. And if you need anything or you need any support, send an email to the distro. It's the same distro there, and we'd be happy to, do the best we can to answer that. And I thank you all for the time. I can make a copy of these slides available if you'd like. And that's all I have.
That'll be wonderful. We thank you very much, Abdul, for your time, and thank you for coming and talking to us.
No, thank you. Pleasure's mine. Everybody have a great day and a great weekend.